high-tech technology. We've got a pipe. This fin right here is called the absorber. It collects the heat, and there's a thin tube that runs up the middle, and that transfers the heat to the glycol. Now we put it inside a box. We insulate the sides, the back, and both sides and the back, and then the glass on the front allows the sun to come through. The downside with this is 2 days ago when it was brilliantly sunny out and freezing cold out on a roof, you've got an awful lot of heat loss through this big 4-foot by 8-foot piece of glass. So we've got lots of smart, helpful people saying, well, you can put a thermal pane on there. You could put a triple glaze pane on there. Well, if we put triple pane, we'll decrease the amount of solar going in. So we've got to keep it single glaze to keep the heat going in. I forgot to bring an evacuated tube in. I've got lots of pictures. We've got a display just outside the door here. But what the tube does is it's got the same kind of thing. It's got an absorber inside there, but there's a vacuum around that absorber, and the glass contains that vacuum. Now, if anybody remembers their grade 9 physics class, we learned that you can't transfer heat through a vacuum. So you don't lose heat. It's almost like having perfect insulation. So during the winter time, when there's a great difference between inside the fluid temperature and the outside temperature, we retain more of that heat. What they look like, so there's two 4x8 collectors up on a roof, a standard 2-panel system. That's what we would install for most residents where there's, say, 3 to 5 people in the household. We do a single panel system if there's 1 or 2 people in the household. This is just a repeat of what I've just talked about here, with some insulation on the back and the sides, and the absorber in the middle with the glazing on the front. Now there's the evacuated tube system, very similar to what's outside there. Each tube is separate, and I could go into more detail about what's actually inside the tube. They're called heat pipes, so they really act like their own separate solar system or solar collector, concentrating a tremendous amount of heat on a little bulb right here. We plug in say one case, 30 of those tubes into a header. We send the glycol past it, and it picks up the heat, takes it downstairs. Oh.
Can you use the system to heat gas-fired boiler furnace with this radiant water for the house?
That's a perfect question, because 50% of the people who come to talk to us ask that question. You can, and if you were going to do space heating, this is why we have both systems. We typically say use the evacuated tube for heating season. It's more effective. The reality of it is, and I'll get into the numbers a little bit later, in order to gain, see if I can do this quickly, go back to this picture here. In order to gain heat here, where we've got a mediocre resource, we've got a big demand, you add more collectors. You put more on the roof. I've got a picture here where one customer put 8 of these collectors up on the roof. Well, that's great. We're gaining some good heat here. He's heating his floor. We get up here, I can't just turn them off. I've suddenly got more heat than I know what to do with. So I've got to expel that heat. So this is where a combination system could work. If you had a pool, that's a great match. Now I can heat your pool all summer long. Not everybody has a pool. So in his case, what we've actually done is we've set up a heat dump, it's called. So all summer long, we're just expelling this heat. So I look at it from an economics point of view. He spent a bunch of money. It's sitting on his roof, doing nothing for him during the good time of the year. So there's all this great resource. It's not working for him. It doesn't start working until we get here and here. Plus, he's also spent more money to get rid of that heat. So if you look at it as a payback point of view, it's a diminished return. The bigger the system you make, the less payback it gives you. Even though you might think it would, the bigger the system, the better your return would be, but it's the opposite. Does that answer your question? Or? Yeah, okay. So it is possible. All our suppliers, without a doubt, will say, do it, you can do it, you can do it, and you can do it. It just doesn't make sense to do it. In some cases it does, some cases it doesn't. If it's an oversized system, yes. Yeah, and so if it's properly sized just for domestic hot water, then we've designed this system so in the summer, it's only going to supply maximum 100% of your need. So when we get to the winter, it's only going to be, say, 40, 60% of your needs.
This might be a stupid question, but why can't you cover them during the summer so that you're not collecting the, if you're not reduce the heat?
Oh, you can. And that's, I've seen some great pictures, and that's dead easy. I saw a great picture where they had a rack of 10 for a residential household, and during the summer, he covers up 8 of them. That works. I've even seen motorized covers, these RV covers that you can actually set up on a differential controller, so when it gets too hot, it'll actually come over and cover it. I mean, you're relying on covering it. The downside is you've eliminated, you're not using this expensive equipment during a good time of the year. Europeans have a real jump on us because what they do is they'll bury a 20,000 liter tank under their building before they build it, have these 10 collectors on the roof, and all summer long dump that heat into the storage. We haven't taken that leap yet. We don't have massive storage, and we're not. There are some pilot projects. Drake's Landing out in Alberta and Okotoks is doing something like this, seasonal storage. But in general, we don't do that. So, and people are very hesitant to buy the 20,000 liter stainless steel tank.
Just a question, okay, maybe has to do with what you just said on that question. Are there any examples in this area where people have built new homes, okay, with a large cistern, okay, that's for the heat pump that didn't have a swimming pool?
Not that we've run across. I don't know. Kurt, seen any? Or, no. Yeah, we've had 8 panel systems, the largest we've run into for a resident. This is not to get too technical on you, but this is a collector efficiency curve, and what it's basically saying, this is efficiency. The higher up, the more efficient it is, and this is telling you the difference between the inlet, so the fluid temperature, and the outside temperature. So when I'm way up here at 100 Celsius, that means that my outdoor temperature is 100 degrees cooler than the fluid. What we've got is this the shallow curve right here is the evacuated tube. This is the flat plate, and this is the swimming pool collector. So if you were operating with temperatures that were always right up here, you would look at the chart and you say, I'm going to use a flat plate collector. If you want to heat your house and you're trying to drive very high temperatures, you look at the curve and say it's more efficient to use the evacuated tube collector. Or if you say, I'm only going to heat a pool when there's almost 0 delta, then you go with a pool collector. So again, not to get too technical, but that illustrates the difference between the two. This illustrates it a little more meaningful. This was some testing that was done up at the Queen Solar Lab 2 years ago between the flat plate collector and the evacuated tube. So the yellow pieces, or yellow bars, are the vacuum tube, and the purple are the flat plate. Now when you look at this, you're going to say, without a doubt, it makes sense to buy the evacuated tube. You look over here, this is probably a very sunny, windy day, where the flat plate didn't perform well at all because it's so windy you're losing all the heat, and the evacuated tube performed very well. But what we have to compare here is so this is all in square kilowatts per square meter. Well, how many square meters do I get per dollar spent? Is it equal? It's not. You get twice as many flat plate square meters as you do evacuated tube square meters. So you buy a $6,000 system, you'll have twice as much surface area in the flat plate. So now I've got you completely muddled and confused, and you're saying, what do I buy? I define it for customers this way. If we look at the two systems economically, they're virtually neck and neck. If you want to do any wintertime heating, then I'd say evacuated tubes without a doubt. So now I'm going to look at economics. So that shows up. This is, again, a RET screen. It's a modeling software, quite accurate. So I've entered the cost of a typical 2-panel system.